The world just quietly crossed $348 trillion in debt. That's not a typo, that's more than 3 times the entire global economy, and almost. Nobody's talking about it because on the surface everything looks fine. Stocks are up, jobs are fine, but underneath there's a bomb ticking, and this video is going to show you exactly where the fuse is. Let's start simple. Debt itself isn't the problem. Countries, companies, and people borrow money all the time. The problem is when borrowing grows faster than the ability to pay it back. And that's exactly what's happening right now, at a scale we've genuinely never seen before. Global debt has gone from $225 trillion in 2019 to $305 trillion in 2024 to $348 trillion by the end of 2025. That's a $29 trillion jump in just 1 year, the fastest annual increase since the pandemic. Governments spent heavily during COVID. Interest rates were near zero, so borrowing felt free. Then rates shot up to fight inflation, and suddenly all that cheap debt got a lot more expensive to maintain. In the US alone, federal debt now sits close to $39 trillion, about 125% of the entire economy's output. Here's the twist nobody expected. The next wave of debt isn't just governments, it's tech companies borrowing to build AI infrastructure. Building data centers for AI is expected to cost over $5 trillion by 2030. Big tech firms are increasingly funding this through off-balance sheet vehicles, meaning the debt doesn't even show up clearly on their books. And here's the scary part. AI hardware becomes outdated in 2-3 years. So companies are taking on 20-year loans to buy equipment that might be worthless in 3. That mismatch is exactly the kind of thing that triggered instability before 2008. Over $29 trillion in bonds and loans mature this year alone, a lot of it borrowed back when rates were near zero. Now it has to be financed at today's much higher rates. Emerging markets alone face over $9 trillion in debt coming due in 2026, and advanced economies face more than $20 trillion. Bond markets have already started pushing back against countries that borrow too freely. We saw it in the UK in 2022, in France in 2024, and in Japan earlier this year, when a new economic stimulus plan triggered a historic bond sell-off. It's not just governments. Corporate debt now stands over $100 trillion globally. Household debt is close to $65 trillion. Nearly 50 developing countries are already spending more than 10% of their entire government revenue just to service debt, money that could have gone to healthcare, schools, or infrastructure instead. Even the people running the world's biggest banks are sounding the alarm. JP Morgan's CEO has publicly said a bond market crisis is coming, not if but when, and that the smart move is to prepare for it now rather than wait for it to force itself on us. If this unwinds badly, here's the domino effect. Rising borrowing costs, right arrow, governments forced to cut spending or raise taxes. Slower growth, right arrow, more borrowing to cover the gap. It's a cycle that's very hard to break once it starts. The world has dealt with heavy debt before, through growth, reform, or painful restructuring. What's different this time is the scale, and the fact that AI has added a brand new, largely untested layer of corporate debt on top of an already stretched system. This isn't about panic. It's about understanding that the next decade of markets will be shaped by how this $348 trillion mountain get managed, and now you know exactly why economists are watching it so closely. If this helped connect the dots, subscribe. We break down the money stories the news doesn't explain simply.